A lot of churches are struggling to find pianists for their Sunday services, Wednesday night services. Why is that? Over the last 10 to 15 years, I've noticed this trend. Churches now just can't seem to find pianists to cover these services. I have 5 reasons that I believe is the root cause of this. In today's video, I want to break that down for you. So stick around, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the channel, guys. If you're new here, my name is Warren McPherson, and this is the channel where we discuss everything piano lesson related and learning gospel piano by ear. Today, I want to tackle a topic that I believe not a lot of people are talking about and not a lot of churches are aware of, and that is the fact that they're losing musicians and they can't find musicians for their services, particularly pianists. Pianists seems to be short in demand in a lot of places. So let's dive into it. The first reason I believe churches are struggling to find and retain musicians is a lack of investment in gospel music training. Churches just think gospel musicians just born with the skill, or they're supposed to acquire that skill somewhere else and then they come to the church. No, I personally believe it's the church's responsibility to invest, train, and breed the next generation of gospel musicians. I was fortunate to go to school and study music full-time, right? I spent 9 years studying music, but my degree is in classical piano performance. Everything I know about gospel music and playing by ear, I kind of learned that outside of colleges and universities. So if churches are looking towards universities and music institutions to train gospel musicians, it's not going to work. It has never really worked. Most of the guys I know who are at the top of their game playing gospel music, they'll tell you that they learned that skill either from just investing a lot of time, listening, practicing, playing, or they were mentored by someone else within the church, right? And so what we're seeing now is, because there's no more mentorship and there's no real avenue to learn gospel music by ear, we're seeing now a serious decline. Personally, I believe it's the church's responsibility to pick up that slack and start to invest within the church. There are a lot of passionate people, young people, and even older folks who want to learn the skill, but there's no outlet, which is why places like Piano Lesson with Warren exist and all these other YouTube channels trying to fill in the gap. But I think if the church were to take this seriously and jump in and try to sort of formalize the process, we can then start churning out capable and competent musicians. And then the church wouldn't have to worry about finding and retaining pianists for their services. My second reason why I believe churches can't find and retain musicians now has to do with the public school system. When I was coming up, every school had a music department, had a music program. Every student had to go through some form of musical training, right? So we look at the school system, the graded school system, start as early as kindergarten, right up through high school. Student had the option to learn musical instruments, not just band-related instruments, but piano, guitar, all of that stuff. A lot of schools now are slashing their music program, mainly also due to funding. It hasn't been a priority for the government and your local institutions to fund music departments. And so it's slowly being slashed. Music and the arts in general isn't being seen as important as it once was. So you have kids graduating high school, 0 musical training, and that's it. If they want to learn music, if they want to learn piano, they have to invest in that outside of school, which not only can be expensive and time consuming, again, they're not learning gospel music, which is what this is all about. Most piano studios, you show up, you said you want to learn piano, they're going to start teaching you notation, teach you how to read music, whip out some classical pieces. Not that anything is wrong with that, but that doesn't gear you towards then being able to quickly jump in and start playing for your church by ear, right? It just doesn't. So that's one of the second biggest reasons I believe churches don't have pianists. Kids just aren't learning that skill anymore in the school system, and it's no longer an important part of the education process for, grade school institutions. Churches used to benefit a lot from schools that offer band, music theory classes, choir classes. But now that schools are slashing these programs, where are students supposed to acquire the skill? So you can naturally see the connection as to why young folks coming up in church does not have that skill.
Do you struggle with these three crucial questions? What to practice, how to practice effectively, and when to move on to the next level? Without clear answers, progress is slow and frustrating. This is why I created PianoLessonWithWarren.com, a structured program tailored for gospel pianists, guiding you from beginner to advanced seamlessly. At every step, you'll know exactly what to practice, how to practice it, and when to advance. Join thousands of successful students worldwide who have achieved their musical goals with my proven method. Visit PianoLessonWithWarren.com and start your 7-day free trial today.
The third reason why a lot of gospel churches don't have musicians, don't have pianists for their services is that gospel music is predominantly taught and performed by ear, right? And let's be honest, learning piano by ear is not easy. It's a skill that takes time, patience, investment, and mentorship. And if you're not learning that in grade schools, and even if you go to an institution to learn music, even though they offer ear training and stuff like that, the goal again isn't predominantly to play by ear. Unless you're probably majoring in jazz. But even then, most of the stuff that you'd have to learn as a jazz pianist, again, is going to require you to read. There isn't a whole lot of emphasis placed on playing by ear. And so, if that's the culture of most churches where you have to be able to play by ear, and there isn't any outlets for you to kind of acquire that skill, then you can naturally see why there's a decline in pianists, right? And it's only going to get worse, unfortunately. So yes, playing by ear is a powerful skill, and it's a huge part of gospel music, right? But without a systemized approach and support, many musicians are lost, right? So even if you have the desire, even if you have the natural ability to kind of pursue that learning path, it is extremely difficult to do on your own. One of the reasons I was able to learn the skill, again, because I was constantly in a musical environment, spending 9 years in university, but also I was super determined to learn the skill. But I can tell you, it took years and a lot of trial and error, even though I had guidance along the way. You might say, well, what about the musicians who are already in church? That leads us to our fourth reasons why churches are losing pianists. Burnt out. This is a huge one. A lot of experienced musicians are just tired. They've been in church, they've been playing for decades, and for a lot of these musicians, they've been holding down the services Sunday after Sunday for months, for years. A lot of churches now run 2 services. So you're talking about 2 back-to-back services, then you got Bible study on Wednesday night, and then you have one-off events here and there. So you can easily average, 6 to 8 hours a week. And that's just the time spent in church, right? Playing, holding down the services. Then we have to talk about the hours spent outside of church, learning all the songs, preparing week after week, new songs, right? Choir rehearsals, weddings, funerals, all of these different events held at the church, and it's the musician's responsibility. So burnt out is a huge part of this. Musicians who've been doing it for decades either need a break, or some of them just decide, that's it, I'm retiring and I'm stepping back. And there's no one to step up because the next generation coming up does not have the skill. Nobody taught them, nobody prepared them. So you can naturally see how we're losing pianists. Older members may pass away, right? And for a lot of these senior, seasoned musicians, not only do they play well, they also understand the culture of the church, which is a huge part of this, right? Every church has its own built-in culture. So it's not just about the ability to play or play by ear, it's to be a part of the culture of the church. Again, why I believe it's important that churches need to be the one carrying the torch, creating the next generation of musicians. Because when you're teaching and creating these musicians, you're also creating the culture for your church, right? Which is important. Baptist is different from Pentecostal, is different from Kojic, all of these different denominations kind of have their own unique culture. And then you have culture within a culture based on just geographical region and all of these different things. So burnt out is a huge part of why musicians are leaving. They need the help, they need the support. I've been playing in church for 20 plus years now. And I can tell you, there were a time that I absolutely had to step back for about 3 years, right? When my sons were born and they were little, I needed to be at home more. So I had to step back. And I could see the role that I filled when I was the MD and playing in church every week. It took a hit because no one was there to step up. Now this takes me to my fifth point as to why churches are losing pianists. And that is a change in worship styles. In the 90s and early 2000s, gospel music for the most part were fairly complex. We have large choirs, just really detailed, complex arrangements that really required skilled musicians to be able to play and perform these music, right? With now the rise of CCM, and most churches now either have gone full CCM or they do a blend of CCM and traditional gospel. So you find that there isn't much a need for these skilled musicians who can play by ear on the spot and improvise and do all of these cool reharmonizations and all of that. Music has been simplified, right? And with technology, a lot of churches now using full-on tracks where if a pianist is not there, they can just bring in the piano track, the rest of the band plays, or sometimes it's all tracks. So you find with all of these incorporations, there isn't so much a need for this skill, which is an important skill. So once we want to go back and do some traditional stuff, nobody knows how to play that stuff. A lot of the generation below me, a lot of the musicians in the generation below me, they can't play hymns. They don't know hymns. They don't know how to sing them. They don't know how to play them. And so a lot of churches can't even do hymns anymore because who's going to play it? Even some of these guys who can play very well, they don't know hymns because it was not taught. So you find that a lot of the tradition is being lost because the musicians, even if they can play, they don't have the skill to play. So they're forced to do the more simpler stuff. Now, I have nothing against CCM. I love CCM song, but let's be real. It's just where churches are headed now. You can see there's a need for this more simplified music, which means all this insane stuff that was happening in the 90s and 2000s with gospel music, where, that was sort of the height of where jazz made gospel in terms of harmonic structure and complexity and improvisation and just sheer musical chops. It's gone. It's been heavily simplified. So it's almost like a skill that's dying out. You have to strategically seek that out through mentorship or through some form of lessons that offer that style of playing, the complex stuff, if you want to be able to learn that skill. So what can churches do to solve this problem? Because my prediction is it's only going to get worse. First, churches have to start investing in training musicians. There is no reason why this shouldn't be a thing in every church. They already have the building, they have the instruments, and for the most part, a lot of churches have people already built into the community that can assist. Gospel music. If you want to learn gospel music for that church, the church needs to be the hub facilitating this. Every Saturday, we got music classes, right? Or whatever day it is. Secondly, churches need to give musicians break, right? This thing where musicians are expected to play week after week after week, learning all these songs every week, multiple services, that leads to burnt out, that leads to frustration, that leads to resentment. Have to find a way to create a balance. But to create that balance, you need to have options, right? You need to have options. And so the investment in training needs to start there. They have to support. So if you have senior musicians within the church that can do this style, you need to compensate them and invest in them to train the next generation. We can't leave this up to the grade school system. We can no longer leave this up to universities. As someone who's musically trained, have a degree in music, I know what it's like going through the system. If the goal is to have musicians that are trained and can play the style, universities is only going to provide a portion of that knowledge. The church have to do the rest. And that starts with investing within the congregation or within folks within the congregation who have a desire to learn this skill. This is why Piano Lesson with Warren exists. My program is designed to teach gospel musicians exclusively and teach you how to do this by ear in a systematic manner. So you're learning the technique, you're learning the theory, and you're learning the repertoire, what we call the songs. Right? So if you want to learn more about how you can begin to invest in your musical development, or if your church wants to help you invest in your musical development, I would highly recommend you tell them to check out pianolesswithwarren.com. Right? Should you learn piano lessons online or in person? You can decide. I have a video right here that talks some more about that. Give you some pros, give you some cons, and just, information about how to go about deciding whether learning in person or learning by ear is right for you. Because it's kind of two different approach. And if your desire is to learn piano by ear, just going to any piano studio is not going to solve the trick, right? If you need to learn how to be a mechanic, you're not just going to show up at any random store. You seek out someone who is trained in delivering that specific information that you need. And so it's very important to choose wisely when you want to learn piano, whether it be online or in person, because you don't want to end up wasting time and money investing in something that's not going to get you anywhere closer to the goal of being able to play gospel piano by ear. All right? So until then, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be notified when I post new content from this. And if you're a church musician or a worship leader or a pastor, I would love to hear your thoughts down below as to why you think churches are losing pianists and what they can do to gain them back.